It's the end of October and Halloween is right around the corner. Whether you celebrate it or not, it's time for another horror-themed video. This year we're going a bit lighter. Well, much lighter, but also quite a bit more familiar with the 1984 classic Ghostbusters. Since 1984, Ghostbusters has been a cultural phenomenon that sort of ebbs and flows within the pop culture realm. With one direct sequel, a series of cartoon shows and video games, comics, as well as a remake, the franchise has remained prevalent for nearly 40 years. Throughout all these iterations, their look and gear have occasionally changed, but their famous style, consisting of the jumpsuits and Proton Packs, have remained, and that's what we're going to be looking at in this video, specifically the ones from the original movie. With the premise of the first film boiling down to 3 out-of-work college professors, Dr. Raymond Stantz, Dr. Egon Spengler, and Dr. Peter Venkman, and then later on Winston Zeddemore, opening up and running a business capturing ghosts, their overall look was pretty uniform, consisting of their signature tan jumpsuits with name tapes and patches, black boots, web belts with the accompanying gear, and of course the famous Proton Packs. Let's start with the boots. These were Cochrane leather 10-inch lightweight side zips. Seeing occasional use by troops, specifically paratroopers during the Vietnam War, these boots have remained pretty popular throughout the decades. They are easy to obtain in their own right, however newer versions have a black zipper where originals had silver colored ones. Moving up we have their belts. These were cotton US M1936 pistol belts in a light gray. Reproductions of these are bountiful as far as the belt goes, but finding the correct color is a bit of a different story. Most people putting together this costume will simply get a white belt and use it as is, or add a bit of dye to it to get to that light gray color. On the belt were a few different items. First up are basic black 3/4 inch key fobs. These were seen being used by different characters to hold different pieces of gear. The first version was used by Ray to hold Ecto Goggles and featured a basic quick release clip often seen on dog leashes. The next two were the same with a simple U-shaped ring, one which included a similar clip as the first, with a key ring, and one that did not. The one that did was used to hold the handheld portion of the Proton Pack known as the Neutrona wand, with the one that didn't being used by Egon. These are pretty easy to find as they're very run-of-the-mill. In addition, certain members such as Ray and Peter occasionally sported a black leather holster of some sort. Though it's not seen in the movie but rather in promo and behind-the-scenes photos, these were for larger flashlights, most likely Maglites. In 2 photos you can see there appears to be 2 different types. Many have speculated they are either C or D cells. These appear to be optional, as only the holsters were seen, and even then only in a few shots, but if you decide to include them, links to both the holsters and some flashlight options will be in the description. Also seen on the belt via a holster was the Motorola MT500 Handy Talkie radio, specifically a short body model which is about 17.3 centimeters or 6.8 inches tall, compared to the full size which was 19.05 centimeters or 8.75 inches. Also, these had 3 knobs on the top, denoting they were the 4-channel version, and also featured the stubby antenna which is 5.08 by 1.27 centimeters or 2 inches by half an inch. Being introduced in the late 1970s and continuing for a few years until it was replaced with the MX series of radios, there are a few models out there with some slight differences. They can still be occasionally found online, but just be sure to check the photos to look for the right configuration. Alternatively, replicas, be they 3D printed or otherwise, can be sourced online as well. Regarding the holster, originals were plastic ones made for entirely different radios, the Motorola HT90 or HT440. These from time to time will pop up on eBay, but many prefer to use leather ones, be they custom made or ones meant for the MT500s. Finally on the belt was a device simply referred to as the belt gizmo, which was apparently to prevent wearers from receiving electrical shocks. The device can be split into 2 sections, the first often being referred to as the motherboard section. Held on the belt via a tape measure holder, it originally consisted of a circuit board from a Sanyo ICC 808D calculator. A black coiled cable then ran from that to the second section, often called the daughter board, which saw another smaller circuit board hodgepodged together using various electrical components, which was simply clipped on the belt next to it. This resulted in each of the daughter board sections being pretty different from one another. Overall, they were pretty fragile and actually were damaged during the shooting of the New York-based scenes. So for the rest of principal photography, more robust stunt versions were made out of rubber and plastic. This means you have a few routes you can go with, such as creating your own using schematics, videos, kits, or even replica ones that can be found on websites like Etsy. Over their suits, they wore elbow pads, which were actually white Mark Wirt brand volleyball knee pads that were dyed gray. The company has long since discontinued this line, but there are a few alternatives such as the Pro Series 3 PCs, the Defender series, as well as fan reproductions that can be picked up on Etsy or Amazon. Regardless of version, the elastic section that wrapped around the inside of the arm saw a black colored square around it, so just be sure to square yours off, then hit it with a bit of black spray paint. Seen underneath the belt and pads are their main jumpsuits. Being something of a hotly debated topic among Ghostbusters fans for years, these were khaki US CWU 27P flight suits, made of ripstop material. Used by just about every branch of the US military since the 1960s, these are extremely easy to find, but locating an exact replica of the screen-used version is not as straightforward. The main issue comes down to the color and pocket orientation of the suits. The pockets, most of which were closed by way of brass-colored zippers, included lower leg pockets, a vertical-oriented left thigh pocket, a horizontal-oriented right thigh pocket, 2 waist pockets, 2 chest pockets, a left sleeve pocket without a cover flap, and finally the only button pocket, which was on the left thigh, used for storing a shroud cutter or knife, at least originally. To round things off, the front zipper was a 2-way open-close design, the waist and cuffs had Velcro adjusters, and the leg had vertical zippers, allowing them to increase their size if needed. Now, this was brought up just in case anyone decided to go the commercial or newer designed routes, as not all flight suits out there have all of these features. Regarding the colors, the problems lie in that there are many shades of khaki that have been used by a variety of companies over the years. Throw in color grading seen in certain scenes along with aging of screen-used ones that have been seen up for auction, and you have yourself a nice little bit of controversy. To make things even better, in September of 2019, Ray Stance's jumpsuit went up for auction. When viewing the photos on Prop Store's website, it's clear that the suit was made up of 2 different khaki shades. According to the description, this was intentional, but the difference in the 2 fabrics have become more noticeable because of aging. This has sort of stoked the discussion, with some believing that the suits were US military issue, while others claiming that they were custom designed by the company that created the suits for the sequel film, Flight Suits Limited, now known as Gibson and Barnes. Whichever side you subscribe to, there are a number of avenues you can take when choosing a suit. The priciest but safest bet is to have a custom-tailored one made. Gibson & Barnes accepts custom orders and is well aware of the demand for suits by fans. They also offer a model referred to as the FSL 27P, which allows customers a level of customization as far as fabrics and colors. The next option is to get a surplus suit. Many keep an eye out for vintage ones used during the late Vietnam War and into the 1970s, as they would be the most accurate if the ones used in the film were government issue. Another option is to buy newer Nomex military ones, as they are very close in look and are very abundant. Finally, the last option is to buy commercial copies. With a few different brands to choose from, this would be the cheapest and fastest route. Now, depending on the brand you go with, there will likely be something slightly different as far as the color shades or pocket configurations, but 2 of the best out there to look for are True Spec, though it does not include the lap and knife pockets, and Proper, which has just about all the features, is made of a decent quality material, and is relatively cheap. Whichever you go with, just remember that the team wore theirs a little baggy, so it may be a good idea to get yours one size larger. Now, to finish off the suits, you'll need the 2 added features done by the production: the patches and attached hose. As far as patches go, there were only 2. Their name tapes and the No Ghost shoulder insignia. Both of these are pretty easy to source, but just make sure to get the accurate versions, as the name tapes were changed for the sequel, while the No Ghost logo has had a few unofficial changes to it over the years. Name tapes for the 4 Ghostbusters, those being Zedmore, Venkman, Stantz, and Spengler, are bountiful, but if you'd rather have your own done, there are a few sellers online who offer custom ones. Now, when looking at the shoulder insignia and really anything else with the logo, be sure that the Ghost has a chin as well as a thinner stomach. If it does, it's the official and accurate one. Moving on to the hose, it was a yellow-tinted rubber-type tube that people have speculated was originally a catheter tube used by US Air Force pilots. It's secured to the suit by a khaki-colored rubber socket, likely cast from a valve stem seal. These are simply sewn on it, as it was for the film, or you could use glue or magnets to secure it too. Then just attach one side of the hose into the socket. The other end doesn't actually connect to anything, as throughout the movie it just appears to be coiled or wrapped around the belt, with a few shots even showing the other end flapping around. Casts of these can be found by a few different sellers, links to which can be found in the description. To round off their suits, underneath they often wore a basic black t-shirt when they didn't need to change in a hurry. Next was their gloves, which were run-of-the-mill black rubber chemical ones. Really any pair will do, but many go with military surplus CBRN style ones. On the topic of hands, we have the next item. Seen on most of the team's wrists was the Psycho M516 wristwatch. Considered collector's items as they were early smartwatches and made in small numbers, these are very scarce and often go for quite a bit of money. You can check eBay and on forums, as occasionally they become available, but prepare to dish out. Now onto their gadgets. Aside from their Proton Pack, which we'll be getting to shortly, the team used 4 devices. They were the Gamma Rate Meter, Ghost Trap, PKE Meter, and Ecto Goggles. Starting with the Gamma Rate Meter, this one was relatively simple compared to the other 3, in that it pretty much is what its name implies. More or less used as intended, this device was the Jordan Electronics IM179, and really only saw the addition of a clip so it could easily attach to the belt. Made around the 60s and 70s, there were a few versions of these from a few different companies, but finding any right now is a bit of a challenge. The best bet for this is to periodically check forums, as every so often someone decides to part with one. Moving on was the Ghost Trap. These were utilized by the team to do what the name implies: trap ghosts. 3 types were seen: a hero version that had various moving parts and great attention to detail, one that was used for shots when the ghosts were caught, which gave off smoke, and finally stunt versions. These were obviously fabricated for the movie specifically using a number of found parts. Many have built their own, be it from scratch, 3D printed, or resin casts. In 2011, the toy brand Mattel created a great replica that was fully movable and included a shaking function to simulate a captured ghost. However, a number of replicas of all calibers can be found online, ranging anywhere from 50 to 500, and even more. Whichever you go with, just remember these were held on the belt by a custom-made leather holster, which can be found through a few different venues. Next up is the PKE Meter, short for Psychic Kinetic Energy Meter. This device essentially tracked and pinpointed the location of ghosts. This prop's core component was an Iona SP1 handheld shoe polisher customized with electronics and lights. People have recreated them with polishers found online, but the easiest route is to buy a prop or toy, as there are quite a few available. Bit of fun trivia, these are one of those legacy props, as it's appeared in a few other productions, most notably by the alien security forces seen at the end of 1988's They Live. Next up are the Ecto Goggles. Mostly worn by Ray, the base item was a pair of US military AN/PVS-5A night vision goggles. 2 different camera microscope adapter lenses were added, one of which has been identified as from the Mirax Laborec photomicrographic camera. A number of replicas are available, one of the better ones being offered by Mattel. And with that, we've reached the Ghostbusters' most famous and most dangerous piece of equipment, their Proton Packs. Now, the Proton Pack alone could have its own video due to its complex and extensive history regarding the original build and uses throughout the 2 movies, the number and variance of parts between the numerous packs, versions such as the hero, semi-hero, and stunt versions, and the pseudo-names given to the sections of the pack. So with that in mind, we'll be going over it somewhat briefly and primarily sticking to where you can get your hands on a few different options. If you do want to learn more, there are quite a few videos on YouTube, or you can check out GBfans online, which we'll get back to in just a bit. Alright, well, these packs feature so many components, lights, and electronics, it makes one's head spin. But let's start with something basic and straightforward: the frame. These were US military Alice LC1 frames, along with the LC1 shoulder straps, kidney pad, and waist strap. Now just keep in mind there was an LC1 and an LC2 frame, the main difference being LC1s featured an all-black paint job, as well as the flat cross-support bar being flush with the 2 sides. The only addition to this was basic foam pipe insulation that was seen on the bottom and top of them. The Proton Pack's general shape was custom designed for the film, being made of fiberglass with a wide assortment of pieces and electronics added to it. Things such as pneumatic fittings, hoses, resistors, crank knobs, indicator lights, ribbon cables, military warning plaques, and so on were seen all over. That's just a sample, as we'd be here all day listing off the parts. As for where these can be sourced, there are quite a few options. Many have custom built them, but it's no easy feat. There are a number of tutorials, schematics, and plans online that can help you if you want to go that route though. Alternatively, quite a few prop makers and sellers offer these ready to go, but they go for quite a bit. If you're looking at a cheaper but close to accurate option, you can check out Spirit Halloween's version. This company, which is a seasonal pop-up Halloween store in the United States that keeps a year-round online presence, unveiled a relatively cheap replica a few years ago. Many have used this as a starting point or a more inexpensive route to source the pack, as they generally retail for $70 US. Keep in mind though, these packs lack the LC1 frame and are about 80% the size of the actual packs, with their wands being around 60% of the original size. On YouTube you can find numerous modification videos in which builders have converted, updated, and just tinkered with these packs to make them look more authentic. While on topic of Spirit Halloween, they also offer decent replicas of the Ghost Trap, Ecto Goggles, and PKE Meter. Though not quite as good as others out there, for the budget conscious, they're good options. With the Proton Pack complete, that'll bring us to the end of this video. Sorry there's no section covering Ecto 1, you're on your own for that one. Now, two good sources to check out are, as always, the RPF and its Facebook group, but also GBfans.com. Containing a fan club, news, a wiki, a resource guide, and a dedicated forums section where people have debated and shared all sorts of info regarding all the movies, this site is the go-to place for Ghostbusters. They even have a small storefront offering most of the stuff you'll need to put together your own costume. Lastly, check out the eBay seller spongefacemcgee, who often has quite a few items listed for sale, from replica items to smaller parts, and occasionally full kits for certain props from the movie. Ghostbusters remains an overall fun and funny comedy with very light elements of horror. Sporting the charm of 1980s film production, it remains a staple in the pop culture zeitgeist, even if it's a smaller one. But, like most other franchises and prop costume heavy films, there is a thriving community surrounding it, and hopefully this video has helped those curious about the uniforms or wanting to put together their own. For everyone celebrating Halloween, or a spooky and/or creepy-oriented holiday like it, enjoy. For those wondering, we'll revisit the franchise in the future and look at the other uniforms and gear from the sequel, the 2016 remake, and Ghostbusters Afterlife, assuming it has new gear, equipment, and uniforms, and if it's ever released. Until then, though, be sure to subscribe or check back soon for more content right here on Uniform History.